I wanted to start by talking about relationships because we're talking about communication. And when we talk about relationships, we have to realize that there's a gradual progression of a whole different relationship. You're meeting a whole different person. It happens gradually and it happens sporadically, so it can be confusing. And I think at first, a lot of us got very confused when our loved ones would comprehend something one minute and not the next. So, you know, what we talk about a lot in our caregiver groups is the difference between can't and won't. Because originally, when our loved ones are doing things contrary to what they used to do or we think they should do, we think they're being oppositional. We think they're doing won't. And so we get into a real contentious relationship with them over that because they're defying reason. And we're used to grounding in reason. So here we are. It's a whole new ballgame, but nobody gave us any of the scorecards. Nobody told us what the game rules were, but here we are, right? So we have to take a look at, oh, okay, it's a new relationship. What do I do with that? The old ways of relating are changing almost overnight. And the focus changes from us to them. All of a sudden, we are in the back seat focusing on this new problem, this new relationship. That's why it's so important for caregivers to get support, because all of a sudden, it's not fair anymore. If we want communication, we have to be in the driver's seat, and we have to figure out how to do that. So it's not fair. You know, it's what about me? The loved one with the disease, their comprehension is impaired. So we're out there in left field. I think one of the greatest things with our caregiver support group is to know you're not alone. That not only are things changing and you don't know what to do about them, but you're not alone. So we're going to look today at communication and what works and what doesn't. We cover that a lot, but I think it bears a closer focus. Now, Roger, if we can go to the first slide. We're looking at problems in communication. If we can get some of the points down there. There we go. What are they trying to say? What are their unmet needs? What happens a lot with people with dementia is they change from object constant to object referral. So they may want a spoon and they'll say, you know, that thing that's round that I put in my mouth, you know, and you're going, huh? Right away, you're looking at how are we communicating with the way they're referring to the object that they want. So that happens. We see it a lot with meals. You know, I want that green thing. It may be salad, and you know, you start having to. What we talk about is, as we learn in communication, we're stepping into their world. The world that we shared isn't making sense anymore. It's not getting the job done. So we have to start taking a look, and instead of saying, why can't you just say salad? Or you mean salad? We go, oh yeah, the green thing over there. Sure, want some? We end up wanting to join them instead of making them feel foolish or in ridiculing. And it's a process. We don't learn this at first. at first we're saying, what are you talking about? But it begins to blend into something called aphasia, where the word, we call it word salad. The words are not connecting. So what are they trying to say? We have to become detectives. What are they trying to say? What is their need? And to meet that, it takes a lot of patience, a lot of compassion, a lot of insight, and a lot of practice, because it doesn't come naturally to us. You had a different relationship at one point, and now it's changed to this. And what do we do with it? Okay, the next point, Roger. So there's lots of misunderstandings. You're not making sense to them. This is always important to remember. You're not making sense to them any more than they're making sense to you when you are in this phase. Your words that feel very clear and very logical and so forth, not necessarily get received that way because their circuitry is jumbled. And so in that jumbled circuitry, they're hearing things differently themselves. So how do you find the way to navigate? It takes time. It takes practice. It takes mistakes. But the thing that I learned from Tipa Snow years ago was we have to always be ready to apologize, even when we're not wrong. I'm sorry, I thought this or that. Why? Because it opens up the sense of communication between the two of you. We don't need to protect our pride in this circumstance because what we're really trying to do is connect. And if connection means that we have to sometimes apologize when we don't feel that we did anything wrong, you'll notice that the energy between you becomes a lot easier. So, you know, caregiving, we are in the back seat in some ways, and yet we're in the front seat operationally. So that's it. Let's see the next point, Roger. So we have misunderstandings. That's when I'm talking about apologizing. The misunderstanding may be all on their part, but if you apologize, if you take the graciousness of knowing you're not wrong, but willing to apologize, it will release the tension that has built up between you. And after all, what is our common goal is to keep that connection warm and cordial. It's not a time for being right. It's not a time for correction. We're learning a new way of communicating, which is quite different than what we used to have. So the confusion, the misunderstandings, there's a graciousness that we often have to adopt to keep that connection open. You have to look at the end goal. The end goal is you want the love and the positive regard to stay intact. The next point, Roger. How about frustrations? Oh boy, all the time. All the time. I hear about them from you as caregivers. I know you hear the frustrations from your loved ones. You know, it's a lot of this. It's a lot of miscommunications. This is a frustrating time for everybody. We don't call it the hardest job you'll ever have because it's easy. But we say there are strategies and there are attitudes and there are ways of communicating and behaving that can make it a much more pleasant journey. This is a disease, and it's a disease of the brain. It's important, it's terminal, it's progressive, and the more we're able to step aside and figure out ways to be with it in a way that we can keep our connection positive, that's really the goal. Okay, we're going to go on to the next slide. What do you need? What do you need? That's a very good question. What do you need in order to be able to navigate this? Well, let's start with the first point. You need patience, don't you? You need patience with yourself, because sure, you're frustrated. Sure, you're disappointed. Sure, you're in grief. We don't talk enough about grief. You're losing the loved one you knew, and a stranger is taking its place. And you're becoming a stranger somewhat to them as well. So that patience of getting to know the new person, that involves a certain amount of curiosity. If you can step aside enough to be curious about how they're processing things, you can learn a lot. You can learn an awful lot, because you're exploring new territory. You're kind of doing it together. You're exploring new territory. You don't know what the rules are. You don't know what the plan is, but you know, you're on a journey together. So in the confusion, is it theirs? Is it yours? Is it a combined one? It just takes a lot of patience. I always suggest that when you feel like you're up to your last nerve, to exit the room, to give yourself a break. You're giving your loved one a break. Go out, take 3 deep breaths, holler out the window if you have to, but release that energy a little so you can get back to an even core, because the frustration can strangle both of you. You know, it's an important thing to remember. The second point, we need good listening skills, don't we? When I'm not ever wanting to equate dementia with childhood. A lot of people do and say, oh, they're just children. No, what is that they are learning a different way of being, and they're learning a different world, much as a child does. So good listening skills on your part. Listen to what they're saying and what they're doing, as opposed to what they should be saying or doing. If they're adopting a new behavior that is problematic, be curious enough to figure out what that might be. When we're talking to a small child, we don't expect them to know everything. We take into account that things are new for them. With dementia, things are new for them too. How can we navigate and find a common ground? Listening skills. I know a fellow who listens very clearly to his mother, and he's learned a lot by honing listening skills. We can learn a lot that can make it easier for both of you. And here again, what is your end game? To keep good communication between the two of you, to keep the rapport, and good listening skills can help you a great deal. The third point, try new strategies. I always like the bait and switch when someone's with dementia is hungry, lonely, tired, constipated, has to go to the bathroom, that's constipated. But when they have their unmet needs, they may not be able to articulate it. So they will show you with an unpleasant behavior because they're uncomfortable. They may be in pain. Strategies can adapt to that by kind of discovering what might be, are they thirsty or hungry? New strategies for figuring out instead of reacting to someone behaving in a way that is problematic. Also, if you want to divert a trajectory of behavior, often you can get them excited about something else. I know with certain people, they want to get out. They want to get out of the house. They're showing a lot of agitation or anxiety. If you can show a kind of enthusiasm, hey, look at this, or hey, if you can raise the energy a little to get them interested in something else, you can divert their focus from something that might not be healthy or a good plan into something else. But you have to match that energy and get a little higher with it so that you get their attention and their interest. Next one. Flexibility. My goodness. Flexibility is so important because you may find that one day something works well and the next day it doesn't. Or that you want them to do a certain task, a certain plan that you have for going on an outing, and all of a sudden they don't want any part of it. Flexibility is really important for both your sakes. If you can't be flexible, you will suffer. If you can't be flexible, you will be unhappy and tense and stressed. So the flexibility means we just, instead of the mighty oak, we become the willow that is willing to bend with the wind. And then you don't have power to. Next point, please. What to expect? Yeah. What do we expect? What can we expect? That is a very, very good question, because we're looking at what's next. What do we expect as a consequence to what we're facing? So we kind of look at that like what you can expect is that the disease will progress. You can expect certain roadblocks. You can expect certain attitudes and certain patterns and certain relationship connections to change. So you can expect to look at a certain amount of behaviors. So let's look at them a little bit. You will find that the more words that you use with your loved ones, sometimes the more confusing it can be. So shorter sentences really help in circumstances like that. Too many options can be confusing. So it's good to give two options instead of the usual, what do you want for dinner, which is too abstract. You can give two choices. Would you like blah or blah? Two choices seem to be manageable. Two choices can help with with the process of getting an answer and getting an idea of where to go with next. Same with clothing. Sometimes dressing can be a real problem. They've got a closet full of clothes. If you set out two outfits, that's two options. these are simplified ways of being able to connect in a way that is not confusing and problematic. Watching, this is an important one when we're talking about connection, and that's body language and your personal energy. You can say all the right things, but if the tone of your voice or if your energy is contrary to that, they'll pick up on it. You know, there's something about dementia that tends to open up a door of intuition, an intuitive sense that is more keenly honed, so that if you say, it's time for dinner, but you're feeling it's time for dinner, it's let's eat now, but they're feeling your anxiety, you'll probably run into a certain amount of opposition or contrariness. So be sure your energy matches your intention, because it will be picked up on. One of the things that I think we really look at a lot is, how do we get our own needs met in the face of caring for someone else? Do we always have to take a back seat? Do we always have to acquiesce to what other people want? Yeah, to some degree we do. But there are boundaries that you can set up. If a request is made that you can't meet right away, you can bargain. A lot of people with dementia really like measurable goals. If you say, wait a minute, that can be forever. But if you point to the clock and say, at 10 after, I can do that, that gives them something concrete that they can think about. You're not giving them an obscurity that they will ask you every 2 seconds about. If you can refer them to something that is organized, it tends to help them from repeating their request, because repetition is tremendously prevalent. And we want to watch that. How can we make it measurable so that you can have a certain amount of peace before the request is met? The more enthusiasm that you can bring to your interactions, the better. Yeah, it's let's go down the list here so we can let's take a look at what we can expect from them, because that's what we're talking about right now. You're going to find more of a challenge in finding the right word. We talked about that with object reference early on. The right word is going to be very difficult. There'll be an abstraction for a lot of it, function for a lot of it. So you really have to take a look at that, and how can you meet that in a way that you're communicating with each other. Next slide, please. Substituting words, we looked at that. We'll look at it again. That's where your detective abilities and your curiosity come in. What are they really? What is the word they're substituting? Next slide. Describing the object rather than naming it. We looked at that, worth looking at more clearly. The word retrieval is quite challenging with people with dementia, so that they're trying very hard to communicate. And what you will find often when they become frustrated with the word retrieval is they'll get anxious, upset, and start blaming you. They often will start blaming you because they can't figure out what it is that they want, what it is that, how they can get you to understand, and they will point the finger at you. They know something's different, but they figure it's you. You will be the fall guy. The caregiver will often be the fall guy because they aren't really able to communicate, but they know what they want. They just can't get you to understand it. So here again, patience and the ability to realize that they're scared. There's fear behind this confusion. And the moments when we can move into compassion about that fear gives them an opportunity to have some dignity around their changing world. Your next slide, please. Repeating words, stories, questions. What is the first thing we tend to tell people when they tell us something more than once? You already told me that. I already know that. You know, and that's a tough one because they don't know they've repeated words, stories, and questions. Being concrete about time that I just mentioned is very useful. The best way to deal with repeating words and stories is the bait and switch. When they're repeating words, switch the subject if you can. Get them to think about something else. That will give you relief because you're the one that's having to listen to the repeated words and stories and questions, and it can be very frustrating. It's a good word. So diverting it with a different story, a different, you know, if they become fixated on one subject. Did you ever tell me about your grandma? You know, I want to know, did she raise her kids in Iowa? That helps to change the subject, which really can change the repetition. Next slide. Losing train of thought. Yeah. We tend to get worried when we lose our train of thought. Imagine if your regular way of seeing things is to lose your train of thought. That can be very, very frightening for them, very frustrating for you. Here again, patience, looking at picking it up and carrying it. If they lose their train of thought, you can pick it up and carry it along. Those are things you can do. Next slide. What you can expect is that you may see them speaking less. If they're not feeling like they can connect and they can connect and be understood, you might find them not wanting to speak as much. They might not want to go out in public and speak as much because there's a shame factor involved. They're not getting the connection and the communication that they'd hoped for. Next slide. This probably does not apply to anyone who has English. Well, it doesn't apply to anyone who has English as their first language. But what we know is that language is stored in a certain part of the brain in such a way that it gets retained. That and music are two areas that are retained, and long-term memories fit in that category a bit too. So if a person was raised as Spanish speaking and learned English as a young adult, for example, they're apt to revert back to their first language because that's really hardwired, as they say. Next slide. What can you do to help? Let's start with the first slide. Well, we talked about it. We'll talk about it again. What you can do to help is to be patient. Imagine what it might be for them. The more we can step into how it might be for them is very, very valuable. Learn to interpret. They're giving you a new way of relating and a new way of talking. So in a way, you're kind of learning a new language. Remember eye contact. Some cultures, eye contact can be threatening. In this society, eye contact is essential. That's the windows of the soul, as they say. So we know that eye contact really helps with the sense of connection. Offer comfort and respect. Offer comfort and encouragement, rather. Small things. Giving them tasks that you know they can do, and encouraging them. That's a wonderful way to build rapport and to maintain rapport. One of the things I didn't list that I wanted to touch on too is eye contact is important. Connecting at the level. If you're standing up and they're sitting down, you get a lot better sense of connection if you get to their eye level so that you're sitting right across from each other. There's a hierarchy that tends to happen when someone is standing and someone is sitting. And if your goal is certainly connection and communication, be on the same eye level. That's very, very crucial. Showing respect. What I think is the umbrella over all of this, as I see it, is helping them to keep their dignity. Helping them to keep their dignity. The tasks that they can still do, have them do it, even if it's slower, even if it's messier. Dignity and respect, we all need it. And all the more so when your world is really changing before your eyes. Avoiding distractions. It can be very challenging when our loved ones are in a room of a lot of loud talking people. Their ability to connect and to feel at ease can really be compromised when there's a lot of loud noise. All of a sudden, it just becomes too chaotic for them to be able to process. So distractions are important. I might also add, which I didn't hear, but I would in the future, soft music of any kind. Very, very, very important, because that's the one area that's one of the last faculties of our brains, is the ability to remember, to relate to, and to be affected by music. I have done a lot of experiments with using noise canceling headphones with a person's favorite playlist on it as a very, very important tool for helping people connect with themselves. Any of us who were raised on a certain type of music, certainly when I hear a certain artist, I'm back there at 16, rocking and rolling. It's a very soothing thing to be able to give people that ability to connect with themselves and with the music that was important to them. It's their life's soundtrack, and it can be very, very instrumental in helping them to feel connected. Well, that's pretty much, that is what our webinar is about today. I certainly would be open to any questions or comments. I'd love to hear from you. unmute yourself. Oh, Sandy. Oh, Sandy. Good to see you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
It's so interesting. Hi, Cleo.
Huh?
Yeah.
Interesting what you said, Karen, because about 2 weeks ago, my mom really stopped talking as much
Yeah.
as she
Okay. There's
other said. Just yesterday, I heard her groping for the word, and it was like a normal kind of word, but she wasn't coming up with it. And now I see that there's a connection between those two things happening.
That's right. That's right. There is. I don't know how much of my webinar you heard.
Most of it, Karen. I was just a little late.
So you good. So you can relate to some of the steps that you've been with your mother. And she's right on target as far as that kind of communication and that kind of disconnect. Do you want to speak more to that?
No, but it was amazing that was just the stage we're at. And also it was her 100th birthday today. So we've had.
Right, today's your mother's birthday.
No.
That's fabulous.
Well, so we've had more company than usual. And I make them only come at lunchtime and then leave. But even so, at dinner time, she's agitated and thinks there's company who needs something, or that we are supposed to go to the train station, or we have a meeting. She had triggered these delusions again. So she was distressed the other night that get my purse, we have to go to the meeting. And instead of, just going like, there's no meeting, the meeting's tomorrow, whatever, we're like, yeah, here's your purse, let's get in the car. And it was the energy level that you mentioned. She's up here, you can't say like, calm down, you come down. You have to go like, yeah, we're going to get in the car, and we drove around for 40 minutes until she finally forgot about the meeting, and it was getting dark, and then it was obviously time to go home. But we could have made life a lot harder.
Okay. That was good.
Energy level. That's a good concept.
Mm-hmm.
Karen went away. Where'd she go? Hi, Susan.
Hi. Wow, Sandy. Wow, that's so good to hear. It sounds like you're doing well.
Hang it in.
It really sounds like you're doing well.
Well, my mom's so fragile now. It's like if I thought I should stay with her before, what can you say now when she's just really weak?
Do you feel better?
I'm having some health issues. Yeah, it would be good if I could go to the desert.
Wow. Well, I celebrate you, Sandy, and everyone here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would.
Hi, Sandy.
Well, I allowed myself to miss my mom's birthday because my brother and two sisters were all going to be here, and I'm so annoyed with my sister already. It's like, what good will come of me being here? They'll just piss me off. No, you say, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a little family thing? No, it's not going to turn out like that. So I took the day off.
Yeah, I think it's wise to acknowledge what's true and untrue, especially with people who think that you're not doing it right, but they're not willing to do it. You gotta just.
My sister was here 20 minutes, and I was describing, Mom had this shrimp thing she really liked from Whole Foods. So I kept going back looking for the shrimp. And my sister goes, well, I bet that would be pretty easy to make.
Yeah.
Did you suggest that she make it?
What was I thinking? How did I miss that?
She got too mad to say it.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. I don't know where Karen is right now. But I'm here, and I'm so happy you all took advantage of this this wonderful, I know we've all covered it so much, Karen has, but to really kind of bring it all out to get, at once is very helpful.
Mhm.
Are-
Oh, yeah.
I gotta
yeah,
say that
good.
respect thing. I mean, we have a lot of caregivers, and we've been through a lot of caregivers, and we have a 19-year-old girl who is so good because it's the respect and the dignity. She took care of her grandfather, and you can bet she treated him with respect and preserved his dignity. And yet I have a 60-year-old Filipino woman who's been a caregiver all her life, and she talks about mom's diapers right in front of her. It's like, hello, don't you think how that sounds? And she scolds her and praises her for cleaning her plate. Like, that's just treating her like a little girl. And she doesn't get it. I don't think it's even worth mentioning because I don't think she's gonna get it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like she's from a really different culture.
Yeah.
Well, her family system is what we would call totally enmeshed. I guess they can rag on each other that way, but it's not a good way of relating to a dementia patient. And I hear her saying, "Don't you remember I told you such and such?" It's like, no, that's the whole point.
See, that's where the acceptance comes in, because when you realize that the person you're talking to is not receiving what you're saying, then you have to do something different.
And you're not making sense to them. That's really an important concept.
Yeah.
That's one of the things Karen said. Did you hear her say that?
I
Mhm.
wrote that.
Yeah, I wrote it down too because I thought she was talking about they don't make any sense. But she was
No.
talking about that too. But she was also saying you're not making any sense to them. That's the problem.
Right. Because their communication skills are kind of have lost them or losing them.
Mhm. And that whole intuitive thing about how they can pick up your tone,
Oh yeah.
and your attitude. My husband is so adept at that, and he's been doing that since before I even realized he had, the dementia. He started getting more sensitive about my tone,
Oh yeah.
and he'd always accuse me of, being mad at him when I hadn't said anything that would make him think that I was mad. And I thought I was masking how I was feeling, but he gets it.
It's in the eyes.
And that makes them, your care receiver, your family member, your teacher on this level of really honestly connecting with what is it you're communicating? What is it if he picked up that you were frustrated and so on, it was the real thing. And it's a gift to get that kind of understanding back. Your care receiver, they're sensitive like a child.
Well, it's a good point, Rebecca, because my mom is really Asperger's. So in the past, her inability to read people's emotions was spectacular. And now she's better at it.
Wow, how interesting. Yeah.
But the one thing I did say, and I said this once, my mom would say to me, "When did you become my boss?" And I would say to her, "Mama, how could I ever be your boss? I'm here to help you, but I never will be your boss." And then she would relax.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm very, very honored to be here with you all. You are all heroes in my mind, and you have a lot to teach other people as well. Thank you for coming. And we will be having more of these webinars. The next one I will be delivering with unbelievable resources in the Bay Area and online. They're just financial, legal, home care. It's just, there's such a wealth of resources here. So that's what I'm going to be doing in 2 weeks, and you'll hear about it. And thank you again for the wonderful work that you do and have done. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us.